Okay. So today we are going to discuss about JPG compression. Okay. So we are going to see how JPG image compression works. So we'll be discussing about JPG compression, the algorithm for JPG compression, and what are the advantages of JPG compression. Okay. So you all know what is meant by image compression, right? We are trying to eliminate some of the irrelevant information and thereby we are trying to reduce the size of the file. That is what is meant by compression, right? We're trying to reduce the size of the file, maybe for storing somewhere or maybe for transmitting over the network. But how do we do that? By eliminating, reducing some irrelevant information which is there in that file. And you also know that there are two types of compression, lossless and lossy. Which are the lossless compression schemes that we have discussed? Which are the lossless compression schemes that you know? Come on, we have discussed so many compression techniques so far. Which are the lossless ones?
Ma'am, you want the techniques or the extensions?
No, I just want the name of the technique. Give me a name of a technique which is lossless. Which are the compression techniques that we have discussed? We have discussed run length encoding, right? We have discussed CCITT. We have discussed, you already are aware of Huffman coding. Then we have discussed Shannon-Fano. So are all this lossy or lossless?
The ones you said are a mix of both.
Point out which is the lossless compression scheme out of this.
Run length.
Okay, what about Shannon-Fano? So what is basically meant by lossless
Shannon-Fano
and
is
loss?
entropy encoding, right? So that is also lossless.
Yes. What is basically meant by lossless or lossy? Lossless means what?
The
You
quality
have
of
an
the image
image.
remains intact.
You compress it. Once you decompress it, you get the exact original image. That is lossless. Now, if you are compressing an image and when you are decompressing an image, you are not able to retrieve the exact original image, then your scheme becomes a lossy one, right? Because some amount of information is lost during the process. You won't be able to retrieve the exact original image. Then your scheme comes under the category which is called as lossy because some information is permanently lost when you are doing the compression. You will not be able to retrieve the original image, exact original image, 100% of the original image you will not be able to retrieve back. So this technique which we are going to discuss, which is called as JPG compression, is an example of a lossy technique. Okay, so when you compress it and then you decompress the image, you won't get back the original image, exact original image. Okay, so today we are going to discuss this technique which is called as JPG compression. Okay, so what is JPG? Joint Photographic Experts Group. So JPG is there everywhere, right? On the web, wherever you're using images in the cameras, we find that form. That's a very common format, right? Common format and a common compression scheme. So today we are going to study this lossy compression scheme, which is called as JPG. Okay, so we are going to understand what happens in the behind the scenes, what is happening. Okay, when you save an image in JPG format. Now, there are a sequence of steps in the algorithm for JPG which will be asked in your exam. Okay, one way you can do is to by heart those steps, but I don't want you to by heart those steps. Our objective is not to study this concept only for university exam. It is to understand what is actually happening. Okay, so we'll be discussing little content. I'll give which is actually out of the syllabus, or you can say some extra. I'll give you some extra knowledge about how JPG works so that you don't have to by heart the steps which are there in the algorithm. Okay, so what you have to understand is that JPG algorithm exploits certain characteristics of humans. Okay, there are some visual characteristics of human beings which is exploited by JPG. One important characteristic that is exploited by JPG is that we cannot see colors at high frequencies. Okay, human beings are insensitive, or you cannot I find out those see those colors which are at a very high frequency. Okay, That means if you are not able to see, or if you are not able to observe those colors which are there at very high frequencies, what is the point in storing them? What is the point in wasting additional bits for storing that information if you are not able to see it, right? So that is the property that is exploited by JPG. So if you are not able to see that information which is there at very high frequency, there's no point in storing it. That means you can save a lot of storage over there by eliminating that data, some of that data, right? So that is the property based on which JPG works, okay? So what is JPG? It's nothing but a lossy compression scheme which is applied to reduce the size of your image. And JPG does this, the normal compression ratio of JPG is 10:1. But why JPG is so special, or it is used everywhere, is because it is able to do this compression without much degradation of the quality of your image. Okay, so without degrading your image, there's a trade-off between quality and the amount of compression that is done. So without suffering from an apparent loss of quality, you are able to store your image. Okay, that is why JPG is so popular. So JPG works using a technique called as transform coding. Okay, it is based on the visual characteristic of human eye, which I said. That is, majority of the information in your image, okay, is stored in the low frequency areas. Okay, so the low frequency components of your image contain majority of the information, whereas the high frequency contain less amount of information. So you can discard some of the high frequency components from your image. Thereby you will be able to achieve a reduction in size. Okay, another thing is that, as I said, human vision is insensitive to high frequency components. So this properties are exploited, and JPG uses a technique called as transform coding. Okay, we are going to see what are the numerous steps in transform coding. Okay, so this diagram which you see in front of you is a schematic diagram of JPG compression. Okay, so you can see a lot of steps, right? So all these steps are a part of this technique which is called as transform coding. Okay, guys, pay attention if you don't want to by heart this and write. Okay, this is a sure 20 marks question, or you can say 12 marks question for sure. Okay, you'll get this question for sure, so pay attention. And this is something which you should know. Okay, so JPG works on this principle which is called as transform coding. Okay, so all these are steps in transform coding. So you can see two sections. One is the compression part, the other is the decompression part. So you have an image which you are trying to store using JPG. So you'll compress and store it, and later on when you want to view that image, you will decompress, right? So the steps are color transform, downsampling, forward DCT. DCT stands for discrete cosine transform. Okay, quantization, encoding. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. These are the steps in your compression. So once you perform these 5 steps, you'll get a compressed image. Okay, you'll get this compressed image. Now, if you perform these steps in reverse, you'll get the decompressed image. So you can see opposite of encoding is decoding. Opposite of quantization, dequantization. Instead of forward DCT, you have inverse DCT. Instead of downsampling, you have upsampling, and you have color transformation. Okay, so these steps, if you perform in reverse, you're actually doing decompression. So these are the steps which are a part of JPG compression and decompression. You need to study what happens in each of the step in detail. Okay, before that, you need to understand, instead of by hearting, you need to understand what is actually happening in the background. So this is an image. Okay, this is an image, a random image. So you can see here, every image is represented as a grid, right? A grid of pixels, correct? So you can see here, this matrix that you see here is actually corresponds to the pixel values of whatever is there in this image. Okay, this is the representation of this particular image, 2D representation of this image. So this is a grayscale image. What you're seeing here is a grayscale image of Mona Lisa. So this is the 2D representation. So what are these values? What are these values? These are the intensity values of every pixel which is there in this matrix. Okay, so whatever values which are here are actually the intensity values of the pixels. So that means you can see here a large value like 149 represents the brighter pixels. Okay, and the smaller values represents the darker pixels. So all these values relate to the intensity of your pixel. The larger values correspond to the brighter pixels and the smaller values correspond to the darker pixels. Okay, so for every image you will have a corresponding 2D representation. Okay, if it is a grayscale image. Now if it is a color image, what is the difference between a grayscale image and color image? If it is a color image, we normally represent it is using some color scheme, right? We normally use some color scheme to represent our image. See, there are different color spaces, color scheme, or you can say color spaces. There are different color spaces, RGB, YUV, HIS. There are numerous other color spaces also. Normally, we represent color images using the RGB color space, right? So you can see here red, green and blue. So your image is actually having three channels, three color channels. Okay, if it is a grayscale image, it will be having different gray levels. If it is a color image, it actually has three color channels corresponding to red, green and blue, right? Now, suppose you have a image which has the dimensions, which has these dimensions, okay? That is 400 pixel into 4000 pixel into 3000 pixel. Okay, so the dimensions of your image is this. Now if this is the dimension of your image, and provided this is a color image, how many pixels will actually be there in your image? Now this is a color image, so you will have red, green and blue color channels, right? So actually how many pixels are there? It is 3000 into 4000 into 3, right? Because it is a color image. We have all the red, green and blue channels. So actually you have how many pixels? You have this many pixels. Quite a huge number, right? So, and just imagine if you're taking a one byte or to represent every pixel, okay? Suppose you're taking up 8 bits or 1 byte to represent each of this pixel. How much size will you require for storing this image somewhere?
36 megabytes.
36 megabyte, right? But that is a very huge number. Normally when you see JPG images, see this is also a JPG image. I've just taken a screenshot of the thumbnail. This is a JPG image with dimensions 4000 into 3000. But see, look at the file size. The size is only 1.83 MB. It is not 36 megabyte. Why? Why? You are able to achieve this because you have applied some image compression. Okay, so JPG is just one of the many image compression techniques that you can apply. You can save it in BMP or you can save it in PNG or GIF, any other format. But if suppose when you compress an image using BMP and you compress the same image using JPG, you will find that this will have a very large size. Okay, if it is a 36 megabyte pixel, you will be able to achieve like only around 20 megabytes. That will be the size of your file after compression, but you will be able to achieve a size like this when you actually apply JPG compression. Okay, so the 36 megabyte file, you can reduce it to a very small size by using a compression technique. Now what you have to understand is that there is a trade-off between the amount of compression that you are applying and the size of your file. If you are able to reduce your file to this size, that means you are discarding a lot of information which is there in this original file. That means there is a degradation of quality. So if you compress it too much, that means you are discarding too much information from your original file. That will result to a degradation of quality. But JPG is able to compress your image to a particular size without losing much quality. Okay, so there is a trade-off when JPG actually does the compression. It does that by retaining the quality of your image. Okay, so our 36 megabyte image has been reduced to a size of 1.8 MB with a certain amount of quality. Okay, maintaining that trade-off. Now let's see how JPG actually does this. Okay, so if you don't want to buy hard, pay attention here. What actually happens in the behind the scenes. Okay. So this is our JPG image which we are trying to compress. So we know that this image has 3 channels, right? Red, green and blue channel. What JPG actually does is, our human eye has a property or a characteristic that it is more sensitive to brightness information than color information. Okay, so a lot of color information your eyes will not be able to recognize, but if it is a change in brightness, your eyes will recognize it very quickly. So human eyes are normally more sensitive to brightness variation than color variations. That means what actually is done in JPG is a color space conversion. We are converting this image, which has 3 channels, into a different color space. So what JPG is actually doing is, it is doing a linear transformation from RGB to another color space, which is called as YCBCR. Okay, so just like RGB, this is another color space where Y stands for the luminance component, that is, the luminance means brightness. Okay, and CB and CR stands for the chrominance component, that means the color information. Chrominance means color information, luminance means brightness, information related to brightness. Okay, so from RGB, we are transforming to an entirely different color space called as YCBCR, where Y corresponds to the luminance or brightness information and CB and CR corresponds to color information. So that means we are only storing this much color information, and this is entirely for the brightness related information. So this stands for color blueness. CB means color blueness. Okay, and this is color redness. So it is a different color space. So by doing a matrix multiplication, we are transforming RGB color space into a different color space, which is called as YCBCR. Why we are doing this is because we are more sensitive to brightness. That means some amount of color information you need not store, because our eyes will not be able to recognize that. There's no need to store all of the color information, but our eyes are sensitive to brightness information. So you need to store all information related to brightness, but not related to the chrominance part. So we are transforming RGB to YCBCR. Okay, so that there we are exploiting one property of a human eye. The next property that is again exploited is by another second step, which is called as chroma subsampling. Okay, so as I said, we won't be able to, we are not able to recognize all the color information. Okay, so you can discard a lot of color information. So we do a technique which is called as chroma subsampling. That means we are reducing the resolution of the color chrominance part. Okay, so we'll reduce the resolution of the chrominance component. So this is the luminance component of your image. This is the chrominance component of your image. Chrominance means color information. Luminance means brightness information. You can reduce the resolution of this by a technique called as downsampling. Okay, that means you will reduce the number of pixels that are used to store color information. Okay, so that is called as downsampling. So you will downsample the color information by reducing the resolution, or by reducing the number of pixels that are required for representing the color information. That is what is called as downsampling. Okay, so that's the second step that you're doing in JPG. So one property that you have exploited is that our eyes are more sensitive to brightness information than color information. So you can remove a lot of color information by doing this color space conversion and downsampling. Okay. Now the second property, almost in the same line, you have another property which is exploited by JPG, another property of our human vision. Okay. The second property is that, are you guys able to understand what I'm saying? Yes or no? Am I making sense? Are you able to understand? Give response.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. The second property that we are trying to exploit is this property. Okay. This is called as frequency dependent contrast sensitivity. Okay. It is another human vision characteristic of human vision. Frequency dependent contrast sensitivity. Now what is meant by frequency dependent contrast sensitivity? You can see a graph here, right? So here the frequency is increasing like this. Okay, from left to right frequency is increasing, contrast is decreasing. Okay, so as you go up the contrast is decreasing. Okay. Contrast is decreasing and frequency is increasing from left to right. Okay. That means whatever is there under this curve, okay, you will be able to, your eyes will be able to recognize it. That is, you are sensitive to whatever information that is there here. But as you go to this section of your image, okay, what is this section? What is this section? This section is what? Low contrast, high frequency section, right? This is low contrast, high frequency section of your image. Whatever is there here that you will not be able to see or recognize in your image. That means you can discard a lot of this information. When you're able to not recognize what is there, what is the point in storing that, right? This is another property of human vision that is not exploited by JPG. Okay, so whatever content is there in the low contrast, high frequency portion of your image, that can be eliminated, that can be removed, because we are not going to, we will not be able to see that. I'll just give you an example image. Look at this image. This is the same graph. Okay, look at this image. What are you able to see here? Are you able to see these bars, everyone? Can you see these bars which are there in this image?
Barely.
Barely. I think you are able to see, identify the bars which are there here more than the bars which are there here, right?
Yes.
You are able to see the bars, these lines, vertical lines, which are under there, under this curve more than the bars which are there here. This is because this is what, this is the low contrast, high frequency area of your image. So we are not you, we are not able to recognize the vertical bars which are there in this portion of the image, because we are not sensitive to that portion of the spectrum. Okay, this is another property which is exploited by JPG, that is frequency dependent contrast sensitivity. Okay, so remember, keep these two properties in mind. These are the two properties exploited by JPG. One is that we are more sensitive to brightness than color. The second one is the frequency dependent contrast sensitivity. Okay, now let's see how JPG does the compression. Okay, this is an image which we want to compress. The first thing that JPG does is it divides it into 8 by 8 blocks. Okay, so whatever your image is, that is divided into 8 by 8 blocks like this. Okay, so you divide your whole image, JPG divides the whole image into 8 by 8 blocks. So see, this is the same graph. Okay, this is the same graph. So contrast increases from left to right and top to bottom. Okay, so you have divided your image into numerous 8 by 8 pixels. Okay, 8 by 8 blocks. So this is your image. Okay, this is the matrix that corresponds to your image. So your image of the Mona Lisa has a corresponding 2D matrix, right? Has a 3D vector, right? Because ours is a 3D, ours is a color image. Now in this case, this is a black and grayscale image. So this is a 2D matrix. So you can see these are the brightness values. Now, okay, so these are the brightness, or you can say the intensity values of your pixel, which is given there in this matrix. Now, JPG actually, most of the image processing tasks that you do works better on frequency domain, not on the spatial domain. So what you see here is actually the spatial, what is called as a spatial domain. Okay, so when you represent the pixel values like this, the intensity values in the form of a 2D matrix, it is called as a spatial domain. But most of the image processing tasks are done not on the spatial domain, it is done on a frequency domain. Okay, so you have to convert your image from spatial domain to frequency domain, because a lot of features can be exploited when your image is in the frequency domain. So majority of the image processing tasks that you do, okay, which you will be doing in your projects in future, are done in frequency domain. So you need to convert your image from spatial domain to frequency domain. That is done by applying a technique called as Fourier transform. Okay, I don't know if you've learned this in 12th in maths, AM3 or AM4, but there's a technique called as discrete cosine transform, which is applied to convert your image from spatial domain to frequency domain. So whatever values you see here are the frequency values, okay, corresponding to these brightness values. So a technique called as DCT has been applied, and your values which are there in spatial domain is converted into frequency domain, okay. Why? Because we have to explain those properties of human eye, okay. We are not sensitive to the information which is there in the high frequency area of our image, okay. So what we want to do is we want to eliminate the information which is there in the high frequency zones, okay. So this is your 8 by 8 block. So we want to eliminate, so this is the high frequency zone of your image. So we want to remove all those components which are there in that high frequency part of your image, okay. For that we do a technique called as quantization, okay. There is a technique which is called as quantization, where we divide this matrix by another matrix, okay. So we'll divide this frequency matrix by another matrix. So you can see here, this is the divide symbol. There is a matrix over here. Now this matrix which is called as a quantization matrix has small values here and has large values here. Towards here it has large values. Why? Because we want to eliminate, we want to round off these values to 0. So you have to divide these values by larger values, and these values you have to divide by smaller values, because we want to eliminate this, whatever information is, we want to round off this to 0 maximum possible. We want to round off these values to 0. So you have to divide it by such a matrix which has smaller values over here and larger values over here, okay. Such a matrix, there's a matrix which is called as the quantization matrix. So in the quantization step, we'll be dividing this values by another matrix, quantization matrix, so that these values get to 0. So after quantization, your matrix will look like this. See, whatever is there in the high frequencies region, most of them will round off to 0. That means you need not store this information. This is 0. There's no information over there. Okay. So that means you are able to compress. So that is how JPG is able to achieve compression. Now after that, what is done is you apply a variant of run length encoding, which is called a zigzag encoding. When we were discussing about run length encoding, I told you there are different variants of run length encoding based on how you do run length encoding. You can do horizontally, you can do vertically. Did I tell you? You can do zigzag. These are all variants of run length encoding. So in JPG compression, we make use of run length encoding, a variant of run length encoding, which is called a zigzag run length encoding. Okay. So how are we going to read the values? We are going to read the values like this, zigzag manner. Why? Why are we doing this? Because we want all these zeros together. We want whatever zeros are there, we want to group all those zeros together. So you will not be able to do that when you do it horizontally. So to get these zeros together, we are doing a run length encoding in zigzag manner. So when you do run length encoding in zigzag manner, you'll get these zeros together. And then you will be applying run length encoding. Okay. So you can store it this pattern like this, right? 0. How many zeros? 18 zeros. So you are applying run length encoding on the zeros. Okay. So got this? What we are doing? First we did color space conversion. That is RGB, we translated it into what? We translated it into a different color space, YCBCR. Because lot of color information human eyes cannot recognize. So there's no need to store all the color information, but human eyes are more sensitive to brightness information. So you have to store that brightness information as intact. So RGB, we have converted it into another color space, which is called as YCBCR, where Y stands for the luminance part and CBCR stands for the chrominance part. Then we again apply chroma subsampling or downsampling. That means we are reducing the number of pixels that are required for representing the color information by doing downsampling. Okay. Then to convert our matrix, which is there in spatial domain, to frequency domain, we can apply a technique called as discrete cosine transform. Why? Because we want to eliminate the high frequency components, right? So our domain should be high frequency domain. Our image should be in frequency domain. So we apply DCT. Then why do we do quantization? You need to find out which the high frequency area in your image, and you have to round it off to 0. So for that we apply quantization. So what is done in quantization? We divide our matrix by another matrix, right? Another quantization matrix, so that most of the values get rounded off to 0. Once you get rounded off your matrix with a lot of values rounded off to 0, we do zigzag run length encoding, right? And then whatever you get, you will apply Huffman coding onto that, okay? And then you will be storing the image. This is what happens in the background in JPG. Is it clear, guys? What is happening in JPG? Yes or no? Shrenik, Darshan, Yashi, Jeel, Sejal, got it? What happens in JPG compression? Royston?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So this is a very important question which you can expect. And the question is, you'll have to explain the algorithm. Okay. So I have given you the idea what is happening in the background. Now you don't have to by heart what happens. Okay. Let's see the steps in detail. Okay. You're going to see each of these steps in detail. You already have an idea what is happening in the background. Now you can easily understand what are these steps. Okay. If I start directly with the algorithm, you'll not be able to make out. That is why I gave you this much big introduction. Okay. So what is the first step in JPG algorithm? The first step is splitting. We split our image into 8 by 8 blocks. Okay. Then what do? We convert it from RGB to YCBCR and then we perform downsampling. Why is this done? This is to exploit the human visual characteristic that we are more sensitive to brightness information. Then we are doing DCT. Why are we doing DCT? Because we want our image in frequency domain. Why we want it in frequency domain? Because we want to eliminate the high frequency areas. Our eyes are not sensitive to the information which is there in the high frequency areas of the image. So to exploit that property, we want our image to be in frequency domain. So that we'll apply a DCT and then we'll perform quantization so that most of the values in the high frequency area gets rounded off to 0. And then we'll do serialization, we'll do zigzag, and then we'll do run length encoding. Before we do run length encoding, there is a step called as vectoring. We'll see what is meant by vectoring. And in the end, whatever run length encoded output is there, on that we are going to apply Huffman coding. Okay. So these are the steps in the algorithm. Let's see the steps one by one. Okay. So what is the first step? First step is to split your input image into 8 by 8 blocks. Okay. So this is your original image. This is the Lena image which we saw before, right? What have we done? We have split this image into 8 by 8 blocks. That means there will be 64 units in total. Now, second step is RGB to YCBCR conversion. Now I told it is a linear transformation which is done by multiplying with a matrix. Okay. If you want to convert RGB to YCBCR format, you need to do a multiplication operation. You need to multiply your pixel matrix with another matrix. So there's a formula for that. There's a matrix multiplication for that. The matrix multiplication can actually be represented like this using these formulas. Okay. So this is the formulas for converting RGB to YCBCR, the one which you see here. So you have to by heart this. Okay. This is the matrix. This is the matrix multiplication which you're doing to convert RGB to YCBCR. Okay. So you need to by heart this formula, which converts RGB to YCBCR. So you have to substitute the RGB values of your pixel. Every pixel is represented as a triplet, right, with RGB values. So you will, for every pixel, you need to do this conversion. So this is the standard formula for converting RGB to YCBCR. So that is the second step in JPG, right? So in second step, you have again another substep, which is called as downsampling. What is downsampling? I told you. The color information, you need not, you can reduce the resolution of the color information. That means what we are doing here is that, okay, so suppose this is your image, okay, we are taking a block of 2 by 2 pixels. In every 8 by 8 block, we have divided our whole image into numerous 8 by 8 blocks, right? Now we'll take every 2 by 2 block. Okay, we'll take every 2 by 2 block. So suppose this is a 2 by 2 block. This is a 2 by 2 block, right? So this block will have 3 channels, right? Which we have converted into YCBCR format, right? So that means actually how many pixels are there here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Actually you are taking up 12 pixels, right? Now what we are doing is that instead of storing this 12 pixels, this information in 12 pixels, we are going to reduce the number of pixels. So how are we going to do that? We are going to take up 4 pixels for storing the brightness information, and we'll be taking only one pixel for storing the color information. Why are we doing this? Because we are more sensitive to brightness than color information. So we can reduce the number of pixels that are used for representing color information. So this 12 pixels, we are actually converting it into 6 pixels. We are downsizing it. We are downsampling it. So out of the 6 pixels, 4 pixels will be taken up for storing brightness information, whereas 1 information for color blueness and 1 pixel for color redness. So for chrominance, you will be taking up only 2 pixels, whereas for brightness, you are taking up 4 pixels. Okay. So this is called as downsampling. So normally the ratio, downsampling ratio is 2:1, or you can say 2:1:1. Normally 1:1 or 2:1 is the downsampling ratio. Okay. So this is the another substep in the second step. So first step was splitting. Second step is RGB to ICB-CR conversion, where we change our color space and then we apply downsampling to reduce the number of pixels that are used to represent the color information. Once you do this, the third step is to convert from spatial domain to frequency domain, right? So for that, you have a formula for converting the values from spatial domain to frequency domain. So either you can do it by doing one-dimensional discrete cosine transform or two-dimensional discrete cosine transform. Okay. So this is a standard formula for converting your image from spatial domain to frequency domain. So you have to apply this formula for every XY pair. Okay. So if PXY is a component of your element in your input matrix, for every PXY, you will have to apply what? You will have to apply this formula, either one-dimensional DCT or two-dimensional DCT, so that you get the matrix in frequency domain. Okay. So once you apply this two-dimensional DCT, you will get another function FUV, which is in frequency domain. So to PXY, you are applying two-dimensional discrete cosine transform, then you will get another function FUV, which is in frequency domain. Okay. Now, f of 0, 0 is what is called as DC component of your this matrix, and all the remaining components are called as AC components. Okay. What do you mean by f of 0, 0? That means if you're substituting 0, 0 here, x coordinate is 0, y coordinate is 0. So if you substitute, if for p of 0, 0, what will happen? This will become a 0 and this will become a 0. So it comes down to the summation only. So f of 0, 0 is called as the discrete DC component of your image. That means when you substitute u and v value as 0, the cosine terms will become 0, and you will have to do the rest of the calculation, which is nothing but a summation. So that will actually give you the summation of all the values in the input matrix. That component is called as DC component. So for every 8x8 block, you will have one element which is called as the DC component, which is how do you get the DC component? When you apply f of 0, 0, you'll get the DC component. All the remaining components are called as the AC components. Okay. So out of the 64 components in your 8x8 matrix, one component is the DC component, and all the remaining 63 components are called as the AC components. Okay. Or AC coefficients or DC coefficient. Okay. So we have done the third step. Now we are coming to the fourth step. What is the objective of the fourth step? Fourth step is to reduce the high frequency part to 0. For that, you can apply two types of quantization, which is called as uniform quantization or non-uniform quantization. Okay. What is the difference between uniform and non-uniform? In uniform quantization, you will actually divide by a constant. Remember, in quantization, we are dividing by another matrix. So if it is uniform quantization, you are actually dividing by a constant, all the matrix by a constant. If it is non-uniform quantization, normally we do non-uniform quantization in JPG. Okay. In non-uniform quantization, you have predefined tables using which you will divide your matrix. So look at this. This is the luminance quantization table and this is the chrominance quantization table. These are two predefined tables which have been identified after a lot of research. Okay. After working on a lot of JPG images, the JPG group, they have identified, they have come up with this luminance and chrominance quantization table for reducing the higher frequency components. So what is done in quantization? So this is your matrix, okay? This is your matrix after DCT. This is your after DCT wala matrix. So after DCT, you have lot of portions 0, okay? Now, this matrix you are going to divide by this quantization table. Look at this. This is a predefined quantization table. This is the predefined luminance quantization table. So this is a predefined table, quantization table. So you will be dividing this table, this matrix by this matrix. So you can see 160 divided by 16. What will you get here? You will get a 10 here, right? 80 divided by 11. How much you will get? You will get a 7 here. So you are further reducing, you are trying to eliminate the high frequency portion. Further, you are trying to compress the data by eliminating the high frequency components. For that, you are dividing your after DCT matrix by predefined quantization table. Then you will get this resultant matrix. Okay. This step is what is called as quantization. Okay. Remember, I told you quantization is an irreversible process. So some amount of information gets lost and that information is permanently lost. So whatever information you are discarding here, you're not able to retrieve it back when you do decompression. Okay, so after quantization, what is the next step? You have to do zigzag scan, right? Why you are doing zigzag scan? Because you want to get these zeros together. You want to group these zeros together. For that, you will do zigzag scan. Once you do zigzag scan, what you have to do? You have to do run length encoding, right? Now, before you do run length encoding, there is a step which is called as vectoring. Okay. Now, vectoring is normally done only on the DC component. It's not done on the AC components. Okay. So, what is meant by vectoring? See, after zigzag scanning, you get a matrix. You get a matrix like this, right? You get all the zeros together. You get something. Your end product after run length encoding will be a matrix like this, right? You're grouping whatever values are there, you're grouping it together. So you'll get a horizontal matrix like this, right? So for every 8 by 8 block, you'll get a end product like this, right? So you'll have too many end products like this for every 8 by 8 block, correct? Now, what is the DC component? I told you DC component means f of 0, 0. So for every 8 by 8 block, the f of 0, 0 will be the DC component and all the other 63 components will be the AC components. So whatever is there in the first position, that will be your DC component. Now the one property of these DC components is that it is very large. The values will be very large and varied. But the value of one block will be very close to the value of the other block. So these DC neighboring DC blocks values will be similar to each other. So what we are going to do is we are going to apply a technique called as vectoring. So in vectoring, what is done is you'll subtract this 38 from 45. So what you'll get? You'll get a 7 here, right? You are subtracting neighboring DC blocks. You will subtract this okay, you'll subtract this 45 from 34. So you'll get this minus 11. So you will subtract the nearby DC coefficients of the nearby blocks so that you can reduce the magnitude of these values. Okay, that step is what is called as vectoring. So vectoring is only applied on the DC component. Here basically we are exploiting the property of DC component that every DC block value in a particular block will be very similar, very close to the value in the neighboring block. Okay, so to reduce the magnitude, we apply a technique called vectoring. So in vectoring, we are subtracting the DC values, neighboring DC values. Okay, after that, we'll apply run length encoding on AC components. So run length encoding is applied only on the remaining 63 AC components. So what we are doing we'll be grouping every pair like this, right? So what is this? This is 3 zeros. So this is 3 zeros followed by a 6, then followed by 5 zeros, then followed by a value 1. So we'll be applying run length encoding on the AC components. Now there is a speciality about this. After doing this run length encoding, we'll be performing Huffman coding. Okay. So once you get the run length encoded output, we'll be doing Huffman coding. And here we do two types of Huffman coding. Huffman coding on DC component and Huffman coding on AC components. Okay. So Huffman coding is done separately on DC component and Huffman coding is done separately on RC component. So for that you have separate tables. Okay. For example, I'll just show you an example. If your DC component is 48, okay, and the previous DC component is 52. So 48 is the DC component in your first block and 52 is the DC component in second block. What do we normally do? When we do vectoring, what do? We subtract this, right? We do 48 minus 52, so we'll get minus 4. Now we have to apply Huffman coding on this DC. How will you do Huffman coding of this minus 4? You have a corresponding table for that. Okay, there is a table for Huffman predefined table for doing Huffman coding on DC components. So from this table, you will identify what is the value corresponding to minus 4. So what is the value corresponding to minus 4? The value corresponding to minus 4 from the table is 0, 1, 1. Okay. Now you have to identify what is this bit size, how much is the size of this code. How much is the size of the code? It is 3-bit code, right? So you have to now identify the code value for 3. So you have another table from where you will get the code value for 3. So what is the code value for 3? The code value for 3 is 100. So now the code for minus 4 becomes what? The code for the code for minus 4 becomes 100 followed by 0, 1, 1. How did you get this code? 0, 1, 1 is the code for minus 4 from the predefined Huffman table. And how many bits are taken up by this? 3 bits. So next you have another table from where you will get the code for this 3 bits. So what is the code for this 3 bits? 100. So that is how you code the DC component. In the same way, you will have to code the AC component. For that also you have a predefined table. Now AC component is already run length encoded, right? DC component we have only subtracted. We have subtracted and then we apply Huffman coding directly. AC components we have already applied run length encoding. I told you run length encoding is applied only on the AC components. So after you apply run length encoding, what you will have? You will have a pair with you, right? You will have a pair which where the first component is the run length and the second component is the size, right? That is how you run count and then the value, right? That is how you specify the pair in the case of run length encoding, right? So you have predefined tables for run length. So you can see here, this is the predefined table for from where you can take out the from where you can do the coding. Okay, for example, just consider this. This is a sequence which you have run length encoded like this. So your code after run length encoding, your code will look like this: 0, 6. That means there are 6 zeros followed by 14 ones, 13 zeros, and 9 ones. You have run length encoded like this, right? Now from this table, you can identify the corresponding code for this 0, 6, 1, 14 ones. Sorry, 6 zeros, 14 ones, 13 zeros, and 9 ones. See, here you have the run size given here. And then you have the code length given here. From there, so if it is 4 zeros, the code will be this. If it is 2 ones or 2 zeros, the code will be this. If it is 2, if it is 2 twos or 2 zeros, the code will be this. So this is the run size, run or size, and this is the code length. So from that table, you have to do the coding for the AC components. Okay, so that is how you do. So those are the steps in JPG compression. I'll summarize it once more. What is the first thing that we do? We split our image into 8x8 blocks, right? Second thing, we convert it from RGB to YCBCR. For that, we have a standard matrix multiplication, or we have this formula for converting RGB to YCBCR. In the same step, we do downsampling also. because we want to reduce the number of pixels that is used for storing color information. So for that we have a standard ratio, standard sampling, downsampling ratio or factor, which is normally 2:1. Okay, so we'll be applying that for every 2x2 pixel block. Third step is forward DCT. Why is forward DCT done? We want to convert it from spatial domain to frequency domain. So for that we have the standard formula. Normally two-dimensional DCT formula is used. So once you apply two-dimensional DCT, you will get two types of components, DC component and AC component. DC component is normally the f of 0, 0, whereas all the remaining 63 components are your AC component. Now, in quantization, we divide our table. This is our table matrix after DCT. We'll divide this by predefined tables, any of the predefined table. Then we'll get a resultant matrix where majority of the values are zeros. Then what we'll do zigzag scanning so that we can bring the zeros together, right? So we have done run length, we are doing zigzag run length encoding. Okay, we are doing zigzag scanning and then we'll perform run length encoding. Okay, now on DC component, we perform another additional step which is called as vectoring. Vectoring means what? Subtracting the values of the neighboring DC blocks. Okay. Then, so we have subtracted the value of the DC component and kept, and we have zigzag scanned the AC values and kept. Now we'll perform run length encoding on the AC components, followed by Huffman coding on the DC component and Huffman coding on the run length encoded AC components. So this is how JPG works. Okay, so it is actually a very complex coding scheme, but you should understand what actually happens in the background. Keep in mind what are the properties that are exploited by JPG. If you are smart enough, you can actually write a Java program for doing JPG compression by mimicking all these steps which we have explained now. Okay, so that's about JPG compression. What is the advantage of JPG compression? In comparison to other compression schemes, JPG is able to compress your data to a very considerably small size, maintaining the quality. So that is why it is very popular in many applications, including satellite, medical, and normal for storing normal photographic images. The drawback is that it does not work with binary images. JPG compression you can apply only to grayscale and color images. So you can apply it to up to 24 color bit depth wala images. Okay. So the question that you can expect is explain JPG compression, but it is not about answering this alone. This is something which you should know because JPG is a format that we popularly use everywhere, right? So did you get an idea about JPG compression? Yes or no?
Yes.